Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at the conference at the Palästina Kongress, Wir klagen an, we sue. I'm speaking today specifically about the topic of the lawsuits which have been filed against Germany for supplying Israel with weapons. This is a very important legal issue because it is illegal to deliver weapons to a country to a state which is committing genocide. Even if there is only a suspicion for the commitment of genocide, there are obligations, and Germany is violating these obligations. This is exactly the reason that the Congress was banned and attacked by the police. There are certain facts that the German authorities are not willing and not able to hear, but of course by trying to silence the Congress, they're not going to be able to silence the facts. The information is out there, the information has already been published, and I will go over it myself right now. So, but nevertheless, I do want to give the opportunity to the people who wanted to attend the Congress, who wanted to be part of this conversation, at least to know what I was going to say in my talk, and this is the reason that I'm recording this video for you. So I want to start by saying that the lawsuit that was filed by Nicaragua against Germany in the International Court of Justice is a lawsuit which is based on the German complicity with Israeli genocide, and it has certain parts. For example, Germany's decision not to finance UNRWA in a time where people are starving to death, and even though the starvation itself is a weapon, Israel has weaponized starvation and using it as a weapon of war, which is in itself an atrocity, a crime against humanity, and part of the crime of genocide. This is not the same as the other argument, which I think is a stronger argument made by Nicaragua, but not just, of course, by Nicaragua, about the delivery of weapons. Because the international treaties on this issue are very clear, and the question of whether Germany is obligated to continue funding UNRWA or to expand funding to UNRWA or not is a more complex legal question, while the question about is it allowed for Germany to give weapons to Israel which are used to kill civilians as part of Israel's genocidal war, I think there is very little question and very little room for doubt there. So that's not a very interesting discussion, but it is very important to know exactly what weapons and exactly what are the arguments that Germany is using to justify the delivery of those weapons. Germany has defended itself in the ICJ by trying to argue a very surprising statement, I have to say. Not to say, oh, Israel is defending itself and Israel is operating according to international law. These lies we have heard again and again from the German government, from the German officials, claiming that the right of Israel to exist is in any way connected to the right to commit genocide. Of course, if this argument in itself completely undermines any state's right to exist if its existence depends on genocide. No, the German lawyers had a completely different argument. They said that actually Germany is not delivering a lot of weapons to Israel. Actually, the majority of the weapons that Germany delivers to Israel are not deadly weapons. There is an internal definition with the German authorities. Germany invented this definition of something they called Kriegswaffen and things that are not Kriegswaffen. Kriegswaffen, weapons of war, are the weapons that are directly used in large-scale warfare. And everything that is not appropriate for large-scale warfare, which could also include pistols, for example, but they are focusing on things like helmets and flak jackets. They are considered to be non-weapons of war and therefore are regulated on a lower level. Germany forgot to mention that one of those items that they define as not weapons of war are engines which are specifically designed for tanks and for APCs, armored personnel carriers. So these very heavy armored vehicles that Israel is driving into the Gaza Strip, and we have countless videos and very compelling evidence, unfortunately, of these weapons, these tanks and APCs, running over people intentionally with the German engines inside. So to say these are not deadly weapons is, of course, a misrepresentation of the facts. But it is also a sign that the German legal defense is very weak, and they are panicking in the same sense that they are attacked the Congress because they are panicking and their defenses are very weak. I want to go through some of those arguments that they made. The first one was this definition between Kriegswaffen and not Kriegswaffen. The other thing is to say that the German exports to Israel have gone down. This is actually another misrepresentation of the facts. The truth of the matter is that after October 7, Germany has assembled a new task force to manage the exports of weapons to Israel and to expedite them, to rush more weapon exports to Israel. And this task force was established by two ministries in Germany, which are the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of the Economy. So it is very notable to see that the Ministry of Defense has not been part of this task force. And the purpose of this task force was to check and regulate which items can be expedited in export to Israel. The German authorities claim that they have conducted a very meticulous study of all of these requests by Israel for weapon exports. It is important to say that the two ministries, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of the Economy, are both controlled by the Green Party in Germany. And the Green Party in Germany is turning out to be one of the most warlike and aggressive parties which Germany has seen for many decades. They are also supporting German arms exports to the war in Ukraine, and basically what we believed to be an environmental party is really about heavy artillery, jet fuel, and other things which are destroying the environment, but also killing Palestinians in Gaza at frightening numbers. And so the expedition of these exports to Israel has been a political decision of the Green Party. And it's also very important to note that the defense by the German lawyers at the ICJ, in which they said, we are checking every export to Israel and we want to make sure these weapons are not used to commit any crimes or any violations of international law. Well, I think I don't need to spend any time to convince you how many war crimes and how many atrocities have been committed in Gaza by the Israeli forces in the last few months. But can we take seriously the argument by the German authorities that they are checking? Is it possible that they have actually checked and decided to send some weapons and not others? And maybe it's the weapons that are used to kill so many people in Gaza are more the US-made weapons, because the US is the largest provider of weapons to Israel, and Germany is number 2. Unfortunately, we found out from the report by Forensic Architecture, a report that many researchers have collaborated in putting together. Forensic Architecture has assembled this information, analyzed it, spent days and nights to put it all together as fast as possible, and discovered that this committee formed by the German government has approved, I'm going to say this number slowly so it will be clear to you, 99.75%. 99.75% of all the requests for weapons exports from Germany to Israel have been approved. 0.25% were denied. And we know also from the Israeli side that they are asking for everything. They're asking for 155 millimeter shells. They are asking for 120 millimeter shells. So the 155 millimeter shells are for howitzer artillery. This is a very inaccurate, very brutal weapon that destroys entire streets, neighborhoods, and actually cities in the Gaza Strip. The 120 millimeter shells are tank shells that are used by the Israeli tanks that go through the half-ruined cities and complete the destruction and fire them through the walls without seeing who they're firing at, and killing a lot of entire families. Notoriously, the family, the Rajab family, where Hind Rajab, the 5-year-old girl, called the Red Crescent to come and rescue her, and the Israeli tank used a 120 millimeter shell to destroy her, the car in which her family was sitting, killing all of them. Eventually, also Hind Rajab herself, the sole survivor, who was then also killed, and another shell that blew up the ambulance that came to rescue her, killing the medics of the Red Crescent. I should clarify that we found fragments of the 120 millimeter shell that was found at the scene that was used against the ambulance. And according to the writing on that shell, it was actually exported from the United States, not from Germany. But we do know that Israel requested also that ammunition from Germany, the same ammunition, when the German authorities were already aware what Israel is doing with this ammunition. And we know that they approved 99.75% of the requests. So I think it should be very clear that any argument about scrutiny and regulation and checking the legal framework for every export of weapons has no basis in reality. I want to say the next argument that the German lawyers made at the ICJ referred to the Heron TP drones. So these are drones made by IAI, Israel's largest state-owned military company, arms company. The drone Heron TP is one of the heaviest, biggest drones in the world. It has the capacity to carry 2.7 tons of ammunition. Now, Israel is constantly bombing the Gaza Strip with very heavy bombs, including the bombs that weigh 1 ton. And they need heavy drones and heavy airplanes to be able to carry those bombs into Gaza. Just very recently, the Israeli Ministry of Defense traveled to the United States begging to buy F-15 warplanes. The F-15 warplanes are more than 50 years old. They're ancient weapons. And of course, they're not suited for any kind of military operation against an actual army that can defend itself and that has any kind of anti-aircraft equipment like, the armed forces in Lebanon or in Iran, which Israel claims to be fighting. But in Gaza, it can certainly drop the bombs on Gaza in the same way that the Heron TP can drop the bombs. So if Israel is reduced to buying F-15 ancient airplanes, it means that it absolutely needs the Heron TP drones. Germany leased some of those drones back in 2016 as part of a deal which was very corrupt, but that's not our topic really, to train the German military, the Bundeswehr, with the use of these drones. So the drones actually stayed in Israel, on Israeli soil, and Germans could visit their drones and train with them in Israel. After October 7, the German Minister of Defense, Pistorius, made a big statement that he says these drones that we leased from Israel are now at the disposal of the Israeli military, and they can use them as they see fit. Obviously, to bomb Gaza, he didn't say that, but this is clearly what the drones are for. And this is a statement that makes Germany absolutely complicit in Israel's genocide. And this is also one of the reasons that Nicaragua filed their lawsuit against Germany. And at that point, the lawyers, when confronted with this argument at the ICJ, the German lawyers argued that this is not how things happened, but rather that after October 7, the German soldiers, the Bundeswehr soldiers, left the country, escaped from Israel, and the drones remained in Israel. And so, in effect, the lease contract has come to an end, and so Germany has no more responsibility. This is, of course, absolute contradiction of what the Minister of Defense Pistorius said. If we believe that the German defense at the ICJ is that the Minister of Defense lied, that the German Minister of Defense Pistorius spoke without any authority about granting Israel use of the drones, and in fact, no such permission was granted to the Israelis, then basically what the lawyers are arguing is that Israel stole the drones from Germany and confiscated them and used them to kill people in Gaza, which I think nobody would believe, and there has been no action taken by Germany against Israel for stealing their drones. So I think that is also an argument that simply does not hold water. The next argument was that Germany claims, that the lawyers claim, Germany has actually sold most of its equipment, especially the deadly heavy equipment, to Israel before October 7. Therefore, it had no way of knowing what it would be used for. There was no accusation of genocide at the time, and so that cannot be part of the case, and Germany cannot be held accountable for what is done with the weapons that it sold to Israel before October 7. I want to put aside the whole conversation about how legal it is to sell weapons to a country which is to an apartheid state, which is committing ethnic cleansing, which is killing Palestinians on a daily level in Gaza, in the West Bank, in 48 Palestine, using exactly those weapons that Germany claims we didn't know what they are going to be used for. But let's put that aside, because we really need to focus on the arguments that we need to make now in order to stop the weapon shipments to Israel right now. Therefore, I want to say that from the very beginning of the genocide, from the very first day, actually on October 7 itself, there's already evidence of the Israeli Navy, the warships, which are bombing the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Navy has never been a very strong Navy, but it has always been a very German Navy, in the sense that the ships, now also the submarines, are mostly imported from Germany, and this has started already in the 60s, when instead of giving reparations for the Holocaust, the German government asked then Prime Minister Ben-Gurion if it would be all right to give weapons instead. One other version of the same story says that Ben-Gurion is the one who asked Adenauer, the German chancellor at the time, why don't you give us weapons instead of reparations? And Germany delivered ships, which was an arrangement that was certainly very profitable for Germany and good for the German industry, but not so good for the Holocaust survivors. But specifically, there is a very corrupt case with the Sa'ar ships, because when Israel discovered natural gas off its shores, and Netanyahu wanted to use the profits from that gas to secure the gas platforms, the gas drilling platforms, because of the bribe that is paid for every ship that is sold to protect those gas platforms. And the ships were bought from ThyssenKrupp, and there is an ongoing criminal investigation regarding those bribes, but it is not going anywhere, and I don't think that the Israeli police will succeed in fully investigating the case, because they made the decision from the very beginning that they're not going to investigate Netanyahu, and that also means not to investigate all those people who are close to Netanyahu and who can speak against him. But the point is that because of the corruption, the Israeli government asked for the ships to be bigger than what was needed by the Israeli Navy, or what was said by the Israeli Navy is needed to protect the gas rigs. And they got ships that are twice as big as needed. These Sa'ar 6 ships are gigantic warships, which cannot even come very near to the gas rigs because they're so big. But they are very much capable of bombing the Gaza Strip with thousands of bombs. So that's what we're seeing now. These ships are bombing Gaza and have been bombing Gaza from the beginning of October 7, but Germany has already signed the contracts for selling the ships, and this is their argument, that they've already sold these weapons, so how could they have known that Israel will use warships to bomb the Gaza Strip? But in fact, it has been revealed by the German media itself that the two last Sa'al 6 ships that were delivered to Israel, because of various technical things and they had to be repaired and some last-minute modification, were actually delivered to Israel in December of last year, December 2023. So 2 months into the genocide. And even if the contract was signed before, Germany had enough time to stop the delivery of these ships. It's not just about having time, it is also about having the responsibility. So let's talk about what is a military embargo, because this is what we need to do. This is what our responsibility as activists, to make sure that German weapons are not used to commit a genocide, and to make sure that the German authorities and the German officials who authorize the use of weapons for committing genocide are held accountable. But the definition of a military embargo is much wider than this. According to the ATT, the Arms Trade Treaty, Germany is a signatory to the ATT. There are rules which specify what kind of military agreements can be made between countries. And there's also other international documents, and very notable here is the Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, which of course Germany is a signatory to that as well. And also the documents of the European Union. These specify three elements of the military embargo. It is illegal to sell weapons to a country which is committing genocide or serious war crimes or is suspected of committing genocide. This part, I think, is clear to everyone, including to the German government, which makes it very difficult for them to actually deal with the criticism that we are saying as part of the Congress. The second argument is that it is illegal for countries to buy weapons from countries that are committing genocide, suspected of committing genocide, and so on. And here, Germany is violating that argument as well. In fact, if I'm sure we all remember how the Israeli Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, made a speech on October 9 and said that Palestinians are human animals and will be treated accordingly. They will receive no water, no food, no medicine. This declaration of genocide, using a language that Germans, of all people, need to be able to immediately recognize as genocidal language. Human animals is very clear reference to the dehumanization of Jews, of Sinti and Roma during the Holocaust, Second World War. And this is, nevertheless, after Yoav Gallant made that statement, the German Minister of Defense, Pistorius, invited Yoav Gallant as a guest of honor to Berlin and had a big photo opportunity with him just 10 days later. So in full knowledge of the statements made by Gallant. And the reason that Gallant was invited to Berlin was to sign an arms deal with Germany. This is the Arrow 3 arms deal, which is possibly the biggest arms deal export in the history of Israel, for the cost of 4 billion euros to sell those Arrow 3 missiles, which Israel is so proud of, and at tremendous cost to the German public. But this is also, and here is the point that is relevant for our discussion, a financing of the genocide, because IAI is a company that is going to use those 4 billion euros in order to develop more weapons, more bombs, kill more people, accelerate the production of its weapons, which it is selling to the Israeli military. So this is the financing of genocide, and that's the reason that it is forbidden as part of a military embargo to also buy weapons from countries committing genocide. And the third issue is transiting weapons. Transiting weapons is often not understood, and also it's easy to forget them, but I am pleased to say that in its declaration on April 5, the UN Human Rights Council has made it very clear that the military embargo includes also the transiting part. It is, they made a call not to sell or give weapons to Israel, and also not to transit weapons to Israel. What is transiting? It means that the weapons pass through the territory of the state, the transiting state, on its way to a country which would then be using those weapons to commit atrocities. And this is what we are seeing, unfortunately, also in Germany. And although we have many European states, I would even say all European states, which are relevant for the route through which the weapons are being carried. So that means Ireland, Belgium, Netherlands, Spain, Italy, Greece, and Cyprus. In all of these countries, we already have unions and some governments as well who are saying we cannot transit weapons to Israel. It is illegal. We cannot participate in that. The unions are saying we will not service any ships that are passing through our ports until we search them and make sure that they don't carry any weapons secretly smuggled to Israel. So that's very important. But Germany is actually transiting weapons to Israel through the Ramstein air base. The Ramstein air base, which is a NATO air base, and Germany claims that part of the air base is ex-territorial and part of it is not. But nevertheless, of course, it is the full responsibility of the German authorities to the weapons that are passing through German airspace. And the C-17 cargo planes from the United States, each one of those planes can carry 250 tons of cargo. These planes are making hundreds of trips from the United States to Israel, to the Nevatim airport, air base in Israel, bringing the ammunition that Israel is dropping on Gaza at an unprecedented level. This is something that, without pause and without any consideration to the tremendous harm that it does to defenseless civilians in the Gaza Strip. This is exactly how a genocide works. The Ramstein air base is where these planes make a stop on the way to refuel, to check, and often to load additional bombs and shells onto the plane from the warehouses that the United States keeps in Europe. So once again, Germany has the responsibility to prevent that. We all have a responsibility to prevent that, to see what are the paths by which the weapons are delivered, by trains, by trucks, from other countries, from the factories in Germany of companies like Rheinmetall, one of the main companies in the world that is making the 155 shells and the 120 shells that I mentioned before. There are other weapons. And loading them onto these cargo planes or on ships from Hamburg, which are going to stop in all of these ports I mentioned in Belgium, Netherlands, Spain, and so on, where we can stop them. And we just need to have the information so that we can stop the ships. We need to have the information so that we can make the transportation companies and their employees accountable for smuggling weapons to the Ramstein air base, where they will be loaded on C-17 planes and taken to Israel. If you are wondering, why do these planes even stop in Ramstein? Why don't they just fly directly to Israel? The reason is that a cargo plane carrying 250 tons of ammunition does have to make several stops along the way sometimes, and any slightest technical problem on the plane means that the plane makes an emergency landing anyway, as in any available air base, because if such a plane falls on a European city, it will cause destruction and killing of tens of thousands of people. And eventually, these bombs are absolutely going to be dropped on a city with people, except that it's going to be in Gaza, and they want to prevent the planes from falling on the wrong city along the way. So these are the three elements of the military embargo. This is what we can do. We can track the information, we can gather it, we can speak to the unions, and because I imagine many of the people who come to this conference or interested in this conference are more to the left of the German political sphere, which means that they have maybe some contacts with the unions and can make them aware that they have a responsibility and they shouldn't be put on trial just for doing their job. I will stop here, although I could have, of course, spoken a lot more about all of the other elements of the German defense that at the court which are wrong, and all of the other weapons that Germany is delivering to Israel. And if you are interested to read more and to know more, then I recommend reading the report by Forensic Architecture, which really gives those details very clearly. Thank you very much.